This is Spartan 117.
Anyone hear me? Over.
Isolate that signal. Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that ship?
Sir, finishing this fight.
Welcome back, everyone, to Finish the Fight, the Halo podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Reiners.
And I'm your host, Alex Kendall. And today's episode, you'll hear a little bit more about this, is brought to you by Audible.
Let's talk about community updates first, kind of what's been going on. So the first most important thing that happened is over the weekend, we had player versus player flight testing for Halo Reach on PC.
Yeah, a little PvP action. I know it seems like we had a decent number of our Discord people who looked like they partaked in it and gave us some feedback, and a couple of you on Instagram we reached out to kind of talked to us about it. It seems like it was actually a pretty awesome time.
Yeah, it seemed really cool. Unfortunately, I'm married to the console, so I can't experience that kind of privilege, but possibly one day. And yeah, so the only other thing that I found really, really interesting is a few weeks ago, 343 had posted that they had recruited a pug. I think it was Gyaza.
Either way, this is the Jesse side of the updates.
This is interesting for me because our Google alerts for about 2 days were nothing but this pug. But it's kind of gone up for debate as to what this pug is going to be. A lot of people are saying grunts in the flood. Some people are even saying brutes.
I was thinking it's probably going to be something like a new BR or something in there. I was thinking that we're just going to do that because you can't really do any worse than what they've done. So,
but yeah, I think it's like people need to realize that they do alter the sound. They just don't record this pug breathing or growling and then just throw it in the game. There's a lot of sound manipulation that goes on whenever they're doing this kind of stuff. So it could be anything. It could potentially be a brute. They could lower it a few octaves, or they could lower it just one octave and it could be the flood. But either way, I thought that was kind of interesting to bring to the table for today's episode. So moving on, let's talk about the topic at hand, which is the Cole Protocol. The Cole Protocol is the sixth book in the Halo franchise written by Tobias Buckell. It was released on November 25th, 2008. It was published by Tor Books and contains 368 pages. The book has 76 chapters, which is nearly 4 times more than the usual Halo novel.
Now, I want to cover that, because I was listening to it with a friend, and she was saying, like, you're already on chapter 70? I'm like, well, yes and no. It's like 4 sentences, and it's like, chapter 72.
Yeah, like some chapters are like, it doesn't happen until the end of the book. Most, if not all chapters, for the most part, are full chapters, but occasionally...
The last third is like 40 chapters.
Yeah, it'll literally be like a page or two, and then it's like, all right, next chapter, next chapter. Interesting way of writing it. I don't get why that's how it was written, but
yeah, it's not to detract too much, but it's kind of one of those things where you do a paragraph break where it's now a new person talking, but instead of doing that, they just made it chapters.
That's literally what happened. Yeah, or there were sometimes even it was just like a character would leave, and then all of a sudden it would continue with the people still in the room, but that's a new chapter. Again, it was an interesting way to write it, but we'll go into, what we thought about that around the end of the episode. So the cover art was by Isaac Caniford, who has been doing a lot of cover art for Halo. Whenever they re-release the first 3 books, he does a cover art for that. He also did Ghosts of Onyx as well. I can't remember if he did Contact Harvest. It does look like he did that. And then it was also narrated by Jonathan Davis, who also narrated Ghosts of Onyx.
And so a little bit about Buckell. He was a New York Times bestselling author, born in the Caribbean in 1979. And one interesting fact with that, too, is he spent most of his early life raised on a boat.
Yeah, because that was kind of the lifestyle that his family had known. So it was nothing. And so he kind of just assumed that would be his life.
From an early age, Buckell was experimenting with words. So when he was growing up, his mother would write down words on a piece of paper. He would then select one randomly and make a sentence out of the word that he got. So kind of like, flashcards type thing with mom, which is really cool. So she was really involved.
What else is there to do on a fucking boat?
Very true. So parents out there, if you want your kids to be smart, live on a boat. And by first grade, Buckell had already written his first short story. Super impressive. And by 15, he had submitted a short story to Writers of the Future. And at 19, He set a quota to get 100 rejections a year to push himself to continue writing, and by 20 years of age, he sold his first short story to an online zine called Jackhammer for $8. He's pretty smart for a 19-year-old, that kind of 100 rejections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like, there's probably like an official number for like early writers. Like, if
I think almost any creative.
Yeah. If however many you submit, for every 100 you submit, you'll get 1 or 2 published. So
Yeah, you want to get that 1.1% sweet spot, because that's like whether you're cold calling, whether you're reaching out with a portfolio, you kind of want that 1% response.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because he didn't even always have dreams of being a writer. Instead, he was writing at an early age. Like he did have it as more of a hobby, but he thought he would actually be a captain. By his senior year of high school, he was actually working on becoming a captain for the Coast Guard. Though eventually his parents moved to the United States, and he moved to Ohio, and he's like, well, there's nowhere to be a captain in the Coast Guard here.
Yeah.
So I'm basically screwed. Because I know at one point he even said if it wasn't going to be a captain of the Coast Guard, he would just be the captain of a boat. He didn't go into detail, but he said he would only work like 3 or 4 days a week and then just ride on the days off. Like that was only just a hobby at one point. He did not see this as a career, which is crazy to me that it kind of took over. So yeah, once he moved to America, he didn't like any of the work that he was doing. So he decided 2 weeks before his first semester of college that he would attend, being the first in his family to do so, which he described as a desperate gamble because he said he was tired of working at McDonald's, essentially.
Well, yeah, it boils down to, you kind of have this career path set that you've had, whether it's through childhood, through adolescence, you're like, I want to be a captain of the Coast Guard. We're on water. I've lived on a boat. I know what I'm doing. And then when you come to the Midwest and there's not really water, that changes everything up.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So in 1999, he would attend Clarion and spend the next 7 years writing until he released his first book, Crystal Rain.
And on to writing The Cole Protocol. Buckell stated that Bungie contacted him to write the book and was somewhat out of the blue. But apparently he had caught Bungie and Tor Books' attention with his writing, Tor being Tobias's publisher. So kind of that like meeting hand in hand, like, hey, you guys need a writer? You write stuff? Let's talk.
Yeah.
And obviously stuff like that helps. Additionally, Buckell writing for the Halo franchise came up after a conversation with a Tor editor who was roughly the same age as Buckell. After they exchanged what some of their favorite games were, Halo being one of them, as apparently we've learned everyone's is at that age, which is awesome. Yeah. The editor submitted some of his work to Bungie and Tor, and they later said they wanted to work with him feeling adventurous.
It was, this is a new guy. We want someone new. We don't want someone who's been so, in the thick of it when it comes to Halo. Let's find someone with a different perspective.
And that seems like what they've done for a lot of the writers thus far is fans who could write.
Yeah. So Buckell is a fan of all things Halo, games, books, comics, etc., and said that he accepted the deal mainly because he, quote unquote, dug the Halo universe so much, not for the money, because he would often talk about how he made a lot more money doing nonfiction. So this was just a passion project for him through and through. He said it made talks with Bungie pretty easy considering he knew almost all of the extended lore already, because the second he accepted the deal, he had already played all the games and read most of the books. And I think he even read the comics too. So he walked in knowing basically everything.
Yeah, knowing everything up to that point.
Yeah, so the book itself was a total collaboration from the minds of Bungie and Buckell. Both had ideas that they brought to the table in their initial meeting when discussing the book. So Buckell would also state that the book was directly aimed for Halo fans. Whenever Nyland wrote The Fall of Reach or Statenhead wrote Contact Harvest, they had talked about they wanted this to be a good book and open to anyone who isn't really a fan of Halo. But Buckell was like, this is kind of a one-off story. This is definitely geared for Halo fans.
Well, it makes sense because having to explain to kind of a layman to the Halo universe of what the Cole Protocol is, what the war has been like, who is Captain Keyes. And like you'd have to reintroduce so many facets that have already been introduced previously.
Yeah, so this book was more about introducing new ideas than having to re-explain them all in depth. And they do a little bit, but that's just here and there.
Yeah, it's to catch you up.
Yeah, so some concepts that Buckell wrote about actually had a lasting effect on readers. In one instance, it was a colonel in Iraq.
And he says, quote, I fictionalized something to that extent in the book and got a very nice letter from a colonel in Iraq who made the Halo book a signed reading and then would have his men discuss this idea. You see the acceptance of torture as an accurate information gathering mechanism throughout Hollywood and is extremely problematic. One, that it is morally acceptable at all, and two, that it is assumed to give good information, an idea discredited centuries ago.
Yeah, the colonel actually thanked Buckell for depicting the idea of torture realistically. So instead of the character who is going to be tortured, I think eventually he gets Stockholm syndrome, which is the more realistic thing that happens in those situations.
Well, because at war or at any time, you realize people are people. Mm-hmm. So instead of torturing someone to get the information, because you're seeking something. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing this and harming them, they're going to say whatever you want to hear to have it stop.
Yeah.
So if you treat someone humanely, like, hey, you have to stay here, but if you could help us out and talk with them, it's like, okay, like this is my life now. This is what has to happen.
Yeah, you can even break down that psychology within, when the police are interrogating someone. Mm-hmm. Like it's a very deep-rooted thing that happens. So whenever this was brought up in the book and it's shot down instantly, like it's so different.
Yeah.
Because then you see, just kind of a spoiler, the elites have a situation where they just beat the shit out of this jackal. They're just like, yeah, no, you're going to tell us whatever, which he was telling the truth, but you'll find out later. So yeah, and then just something I wanted to throw in there is that Buckell actually played Halo 3 first because he saw all the hype that was generated around it. So he bought an Xbox, played Halo 3, and was like, this is amazing, and I have to go play the first two now. So I thought it was always interesting. Like, he's a pretty hardcore fan, but not everyone, even, writers of the Halo novels, start out, in CE.
Well, yeah, and like you said, like his life wasn't one of growing up with gaming or any of those things. I mean, he lived on a boat, moved here.
He played with paper.
Yeah, he made words and wrote stories. So obviously that was, his background. Mm-hmm. You jump into gaming and you can kind of play all that through. Like that's a really cool thing. Mm-hmm. So we're getting to the book. Let's start off and break down who we're going to see in the book. Mm-hmm. Just some really key characters that we're either seeing from the universe that they've given us so far, or some new ones in here, especially a couple Spartans.
Yeah.
And so to start off for the UNSC, you have Jacob Keyes. Woo. You have our three Spartans, Adriana, 111, Jai, which I love that he always calls himself 006, and Mike, which is Spartan 120. You got Akio Watanabe, Dimitri Zeng, Faison, who is our leader of the Helljumpers in this book. We've got Preston Cole, Jean Malchese, Badia Campbell, Ray Lee, Dante Kirtley, Miranda Keys, Corinthia Hansen, Josh Smith, Finley, Jeffries, Markov, Canfield, Tom Garanser, and Hadley. So we got a couple characters you're going to meet who are pretty much based only in this book. A lot of ODST, a lot of bridge crew that are with Keys in there.
Yeah.
And a lot of characters that we're seeing on a world that we're going to see is called Rubble. And see kind of what happens with them.
Yeah. So then on the Covenant side, we have Thel Vadami. Now, this was before his military rank was stripped, because we learn in the book that the EE at the end of your name means you're like an active duty. So we know him as Thel Vadam, but it's actually Thel Vadami in this book. So we also have Zar, Veer, Reth, Chur Mutt, Jorah Connery, Saul, Kaido Vadam, Lok Vadami, Peleus, Pippet, the Prophet of Regret, and the Prophet of Truth.
And then on my side, my support falls to them, are the insurrectionists, with Jason Kincaid, Peter Bonifacio, Ignacio Delgado, Diego Esquivel, Maria Esquivel, Juliana, Melko Hollister, Eddie Underwood, and Owen.
The insurrectionists, by the way, have the coolest names in this book.
Oh, by far. And once again, this goes on to my feelings within the universe. We actually get to see from the insurrectionist, from the refugee point of view, because we'll realize some of these people on here aren't necessarily full insurrectionists.
They're just bunking with them, essentially.
Exactly.
They're on a world that
they're on a refugee world, basically.
That accepts everyone, UNSC, anyone, essentially. Yeah. So yeah, I found that really, really interesting. Also, you see a lot more people from different walks of life, because Tobias talks about that in his writing. He tries to make it as mixed up and as multicultural as possible.
Well, and that goes to show you back to the torturing thing that we kind of talked about, that humans are humans. Aliens are aliens type thing. So it's kind of, when you get to know each other, we're all the same. We just happen to either be born differently or in different situations, like some of these people.
Yeah. All right, so now let's move on to the summary of the book itself. And it starts out pretty cool. It starts out, so we're at the refugee world, the Rubble, and there's these Kigyar attacking it. And we learn that the Rubble is at but the Jackals are actually trying to get navigation data to find Earth. And so...
Yeah, exactly. Because that's kind of going with our point of why the book is called The Cold Protocol. You know, it's there's a data chip with Earth's location, and the Kigyar, as we were learning in the first kind of chapter, kind of prologue with it, where we're getting introduced to both Ignacio Delgado and his friend Melko Hollister, is that they're trying to protect it.
Yeah, and so eventually the Jackals do manage to actually kill Melko. It doesn't show it, but he does get hit, and he tries to protect Ignacio.
Yeah, because both of them end up taking a shot and trying to get through this. But you see that it's kind of all despair right now. I mean, they're doing what they can, and what I love is at this portion they're talking about Delgado's sidearm. And
Senora Seis.
Yeah, and it's this beautiful 6-shooter that it was Grandpa, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it was his grandpa who labored over this gun and customized it with like this beautiful wood and custom metals and made it this showpiece that comes up a little bit in the book, and it's just really cool, and it's a beautiful memento.
I think it reminds me of the "Hey, you're famous" and Uprising. It's like, this is a nice gun. Like it kind of that reoccurring thing that keeps coming up.
and it shows that his family really cared about each other and like making these pieces for just beautiful things. So it's a really cool start to one of our main characters.
Yeah. And so in the midst of all this, Adriana 111 or 111 shows up, and she actually saves Delgado from being killed by the Kigyar. And so she hands him a beacon. She's like, listen, if this navigation data gets out of your hands, activate this and we'll come find you. And she also says, by the way, I was never here.
Yeah.
And then throws down a puff of smoke and then disappears.
Yeah, it's such a cool intro because this is, for most of the people that are going to see this book, this is the first time any of them are even seeing a Spartan. Especially this far out, because we're in the outer worlds right now.
And we're about 10 years into the war. Yeah, so it's interesting because it always describes in the book every time someone sees a Spartan, they're kind of like, what is that? Because
what is a 7-foot half-ton monstrosity?
Yeah. And so then we kind of change pace because then we see Captain Keyes again. And so as of right now, Lieutenant Keyes is actually a teacher. So he's teaching, was it naval tactics or whatever they teach in the UNSC?
Yeah. So I believe he's teaching naval tactics and kind of how to work around the Covenant and things like that, like famous battles, things like that, and trying to, obviously prep the next class for the next captains.
Yeah, and so he meets Commander Dmitry Zhang, and you find out that he's actually transferred he's at Luna OCS Academy. And so he's now given a stealth frigate, the UNSC Midsummer Night, and the Cold Protocol is like a new thing. So like, we have a mission for you. You need to go and enforce the Cold Protocol.
And I think at this point, Keyes was listed as inactive for battle.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of like, you're reinstated.
Yeah, they're like, all right, well, you're back. And I think he kind of wanted this. He kind of missed it, being in the captain's chair. And so, so the Cold Protocol is this big thing that's going on. It's almost like, I don't want to say it's revolutionary, but like it just took effect. So they're like, all right, everyone needs to do this no matter what.
And not just the UNSC. It's
everyone.
Any ship that's ever had like any interworld data.
Yeah, so if you got a text from someone on your ship from Earth, your ship needs to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Which is kind of this conflict of interest that comes up. It's because, well, before any of that, he meets Jeffries, who is this wisecracking Pelican pilot.
Yeah, he's kind of like, who is the character we just had in Harvest?
I know what you're talking about.
He was with Johnson. He's kind of like the comic relief, kind of like breaking you back into the spirit of it.
Yeah, and he had like his pilot's outfit wasn't fully buttoned up or something, and eventually Keyes like rips him a new asshole, and it's like, I don't care, like button up everything, like you're under me, I don't give a shit who you are, like look presentable.
Yeah, because Keyes is like asserting that kind of role as captain in the chair again. Because at first when they meet, he's kind of like, your uniform's out of whack. He's like, no one cares around here. Like, we're just doing this thing. And so then when he meets him again to take off, he's like, you better clean that shit up. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, and you can tell again, he's pissed, but he's like, I have to. So eventually Keyes meets up with Oni officer Major Watanabe and Zhang, and they kind of discuss this mission that they have to do, which I even like that Watanabe is an Oni officer, so they said he just like sneaks up on people.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. It's like we're seen when we want to be seen, we're heard when we want to be heard, because they're spooks.
Yeah, and it's kind of like those things, like, we get it. Like that David comment, like, it's annoying that they do that.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it, and it was an interesting intro. I guess I'll throw those two words together. It's an interesting intro to these characters, because you're starting to slowly get background on who's on Keyes' ship, and possibly their fate. And we'll see, which is cool. And like I talked about earlier, the kind of jumping back and forth, which I made fun of the chapter count. It's done really well. It's just too many chapters. Yeah. But we then jump from our stealth ship back to the Rubble, and we're with Delgado.
Yeah.
Who's looking for clues because he suspected that someone had to tip the Jackals off.
Yeah, well, they were at Melko's funeral, his friend that died. They were at there, and he talks to
Maria.
He talks to Maria, and
so he's talking to her, and then ends up talking with her brother Diego, who we learn is one of these council members who runs the Rubble.
Yeah,
and he's kind of like, Diego, you entrusted me to keep this data safe. Like, he's like, there's no way any of those Jackals would have known where we were. Like, we were definitely set up. And you start to learn that there's been this kind of plot to sell that navigation data to the Jackals. And this is the first time I think we ever hear about a human covenant species interaction that's not hostile.
Yeah, so it's kind of like they've been like working with each other.
Yeah, and trading goods and weaponry and things we'll learn in the future, like what impacts those have on it.
Yeah, and so we find out that it's Peter Bonifacio, again with the great names, who's a known smuggler who was eventually voted on the Security Council, and they even said like on the side he still does some of that smuggling. So that's kind of like they're like putting two and two together. They're
because he's thinking, what ship has left and come back from the in-world from trading, smuggling certain goods. Who's the only member who hasn't been here? And they're like, okay, we're putting these things together and slowly piecing it.
Yeah. And so eventually, he kind of tries to go all covert ops and is like, I'm going to figure out, I'm going to get some hard proof about this. And so he makes his way into this bar. And something he mentions is that he sees this bodybuilder off to the side. And so he sits down and he's talking to someone he knows, and I can't, their name escapes me, but they made a comment about, like what did they say, the queen or princess over there?
Oh, because you're talking to the bartender.
Yeah,
he was sitting up at the bar. Yeah.
And so we realized, like, well, first of all, because he thought it was a male bodybuilder, but he's like, oh, that's a female, like, because of how big she is. And then he goes over and it's Adriana, the Spartan, and she's not in her armor, and she's asking questions too, because they're trying to get to the bottom of this, because they're trying to kind of learn. They're trying to enact the Cole Protocol.
Yeah, and that's why we figure out they were sent out there.
Yeah, and so all of a sudden, all the insurrectionists in the bar are kind of like, you two are sniffing around a little too much, and he just gets lumped with her because they're talking to each other. So we see her be a Spartan, kick everyone's ass, and then eventually, as things start getting a little hot, Jai walks in, and he's in his armor. And
he's in his full armor.
Everyone freezes. They're like, what the fuck is this? So yeah, I found that interesting, and they managed to get out just because everyone was too scared to mess with them. But yeah, so then eventually Delgado makes his way back to Gray Team ship, the Petya. We find out, like, they're officially Gray Team, so it's Jai, Mike, and Adriana, as we said, and they explained to Diego, as we said earlier, that we got to destroy that navigation data. We gave it back to you, but we got to destroy it because it's part of the Cole Protocol. I don't know. There was some silly stuff going on.
I think what they were trying to do too, with him keeping the data with the beacon, was to try and see who was kind of the leaker of it, because they had a little bit of info on that. And what I really like too is that with Adriana, she kind of vouches for Delgado.
Yeah.
But especially Jai is like, I'm not dealing with insurrectionists.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, like he's cool. Like we're gonna deal with him for now. Like
Yeah. And Delgado eventually storms off. He's like, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm gonna figure this out on my own. And he leaves. He just up and leaves. And they even make a comment like, you picked a feisty one, Adriana. Like, so she sticks her neck out for him because she likes him. Like she's like, okay, this is like a guy. This is an asset that we need.
Yeah. And what I really love about Buckell writing this with the Spartans, he gives them all really unique personalities, and they're actually kind of witty, which we've talked about in other ones. It's kind of a quality you don't see in a huge amount of Spartans.
Yeah, well, because they're been brainwashed since they were children. They're robotic, so kind of a reason you're automatically saying, well, why is this Spartan team kind of off on their own? Why are they different? And we actually learn in the next scene is after Delgado leaves, it kind of flashes back to when Jai and Adriana were kids. And we find out that while they were young, they kept trying to escape. They tried to escape multiple times, and they said every time they would have to use different tactics to find them. And finally, Jai was brought in to talk to Catherine Halsey. And I just love how she tries to explain this to him so horribly. She's like, okay, listen, if you really want to leave, you can go and run off, and we'll shoot you in the head with this tranquilizer, and it'll make you forget about everything. And it's just, I love seeing this 5-year-old kind of naive kid go, is she telling the truth? I can't tell.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're just going to shoot you in the head. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Oh, that's exactly it.
But yeah, so she actually does tell him, though, like, listen, you had no one when we kidnapped you. You were an orphan who kept running off. Like, you have a purpose here. Like, we don't want you running off. We have plans for you. And so that night he met up with Adriana, and he says, like, what did she tell you? And she was just crying. So Halsey did what she does best, and she played this really fucked mind game with him. So they eventually decided, like, let's go back home. Like, let's just go. And so when they went back home, they were told, like, listen, we have plans for you. We can guarantee it. And they're paired up with Mike. And they're like, what did you do? He's like, I stole a Pelican.
Yeah.
Because, like they said that Mike, when they came to the base originally, he saw a pilot controlling the Pelican once. That's all he needed to see. And so Mike's like the tech guy. But they're like, yeah, I stole a Pelican. So there's like, okay, well, these three are kind of troublemakers. Let's make them a group where we just send them behind enemy lines.
Yeah, it's Great Team, a.k.a. Team Wanderlust.
Yeah, like they're the kind of the stepchild that, dad doesn't want to talk to. Let's just go play in traffic. That's what my parents always told me.
Well, I see it as this is a team that always wanted to get out from, like the UNSC noses. And then that's kind of what we're seeing with this, and we'll see at the end of the book, is that, they're the team that is perfect for this because they always want to be going. They want to see stuff. They want to explore. They want to cause a little bit of mayhem, and that's what they do best. So that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I think they're kind of like the punks of the group. Like really, that's what it is. Like almost anti-authority.
Yeah,
while working for the authority, like doing things their own way. Because they even talk about like Gray Team will go without years with talking with anyone. Like they'll just do their own thing, and like UNSC doesn't know if they're alive or dead. They just know occasionally this group of Covenant that we wanted to die died.
Yeah,
so we think it's them. Yeah, like something like that. Like which I think is really, really cool. Like I love that aspect about them. So now we're back with Jacob Keyes.
Chapter 704.
Yeah, chapter 704.
Yeah, and so we're back to the Midsummer Night, and Keyes is attempting to enforce the cold protocol on a civilian freighter. Because obviously they're like, okay, you have to erase all your star charts. You have to pretty much wipe your ship, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So he takes down himself and some ODSTs to board the freighter. The insurrectionist captain is like, you pigs, like you are just policing us for no reason.
Well, I don't think they know that he's an insurrectionist at the time.
No.
He's just a regular captain.
He's just like a trading captain, basically.
Yeah. And I like that they also talk about that these ODST have been on these missions for a while, and they haven't seen any action, so they've kind of been like angsty just to go down there and police it. But yeah, so what you're saying, this guy was kind of chewing Keyes out.
Yeah, because he's saying like you guys don't let us live. Like you're putting all these crazy rules on us for no reason. And then Keyes was like, okay, we're doing what we have to do. Like sweep that container. Like see, like just double check what's in it.
Yeah, and then this is almost like the Hydra call of like cut one head off and two will come back. Like all of a sudden the guy's like, we're gonna win one day, and then boom, it was a fucking bomb. Which this scene is really cool how they tell it. Like, of course, like bunch of ODST are dead, and Keyes is like, it's almost that scene you see in movies when a bomb goes off and like the person doesn't really have their hearing.
The ringing ears.
Yeah, and they're disoriented and someone's trying to talk to them, but it's like a faint voice they hear. Like, so that was really cool to see that go down. Not cool. It
wasn't cool to see go down. It was just a really cool scene.
Yeah, it was well written. How
well
about that?
written.
Bombs aren't cool, but if you write about them cinematically, then that is cool.
Then they're really cool. They're Michael Bay cool. And we're seeing that, as Keyes is coming out of this, he's looking around. He's looking at bodies strewn, people not moving, and First Lieutenant Canfield, who was the commander for the ODSTs, is dead. So Keyes and the ODST are trying to figure out what's going on and trying to figure out what they're going to do about this. So Keyes starts to devise a plan, and he decides, as the ODSTs are doing what they do best, they're sweeping the ship, they're trying to go out and see, make sure that it's clean. Keyes is like, wait, did you guys hail Midsummer Night?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, none of us did.
Yeah.
And so he's like, oh, the insurrectionist did, and this whole ship is a bomb.
Yeah. And so Keyes is like, listen, we need to get within signal of them, and we need to get everyone off of here. So he devises a plan. He's like, listen, I'm going to leave this ship. And this is where we kind of meet Phazon, and he butts heads with Phazon because Phazon thinks his plan's bad. And he's like, I don't give a shit. I don't care if I'm Navy and you're the Marines. Like, I have command of you. So he puts everyone, like, he puts a bunch of ODST in these containers.
He takes the cargo containers that are still there. One is reserved for the dead. One is reserved for the injured, and all of the active ODST that can move around will actually pilot out with them because the ODST suits are atmosphere proof. I think 15 minutes of oxygen.
Yeah.
So they can do that. And so that's when Keyes, looks at like one of the wounded and he's like, give me your armor.
Yeah, so he puts on armor, and he makes his way out. And so he gets within range of the Midsummer Night to say, hey, like, it's a fucking trap. Get out, get out, get out. And as like one of the containers comes out, the ship that they were just on blows up and kills a bunch of ODST. So he instantly feels guilty. And he doesn't get shot, does he? Or does he get shot on his way out? Weren't the insurrectionists shooting at him?
Yeah, so he was getting shot at, and like some of the armor took some of the pings, but he never got like pierced.
Yeah.
So he was using the battle rifle that he had to use that burst to kind of like propel him.
Yeah.
And that's what the ODSTs were doing. Like they were holding onto the containers and firing away and trying to get the containers out. And so Keyes thinks at this moment, he goes, I've lost everyone on this mission. It was a complete and utter failure.
Yeah, he kind of is like down on himself, and he's basically just like, I screwed over all these men.
Yeah, like this was on me.
So yeah, then we get that switch, and now we're on Zenghelios, and we actually see Thel Vadami, and he's just chilling in the middle of the night, waiting to be killed. Apparently, this is a normal thing, and we'll go into that in a second. So 3 assassins come into his home, and he kills them instantly.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily waiting. It was kind of talking about he was just in his area and could kind of tell.
He was not so much waiting, but he knew it was coming.
Yeah, because what this basically was he got appointed...
Kaidan.
Yeah, he got appointed Kaidan. And if you wanted to kind of vote no confidence, but you were too chicken to vote it, you would send assassins to test out the new Kaidan.
Yeah, and so instantly he kills all 3 of them. So he calls in one of the guards, and he's like, hey, call all these, it's like a council. He's like, call these council members. Like, we need a meeting right now, and it's very early in the morning. And something, they really, really dive into Zengheli culture in this, because the guard is like, it's really early, and the guy's like, and Thel's like, did I stutter? And the dude's like, and the dude's like, puts his head down, he's like, I'll never dishonor you again.
Yeah,
that comes up
it's
so much.
It's so much about honor, and it's not only your honor, it's your family's lineage honor.
Yeah, because he goes in and he shows the council. He literally gets buck naked for a second. He's like, look, not a scratch on me. And he tells the council members, he says, 3 assassins came to kill me. I killed 2 of them. One of them just told me who sent me. And he sees like one of the council members
Starts sweating like,
yeah, he's just a gulp. and he instantly points him out, and he's like, "Why didn't you just vote no, bro? Why didn't you just stand up?" And so he kills the guy. And so apparently, I like how this was written a lot because there's these. It's like your name or your picture is on the wall, and this guy was jealous that he wasn't voted Kaidan. And so when Thel kills him, his blood splatters on the wall, and it says, "This is the closest that he will ever be on the wall." Or, his name will be on the wall or something like that.
Yeah, it's like being the star athlete. You get your name for that year. So it's kind of like this is the lineage. Like not only do you have a blood lineage, but you have your name etched forever in these stones.
Yeah.
And one thing, going back to the writing aspect of it as well, that I love that dives even deeper into that Sangheili culture is that at the last moment, basically the traitor, we'll call him the traitor, the guy who didn't vote for him, he doesn't plead for his life.
Yeah.
He says, just spare my family, my lineage, and then is going to go like try and attack, try and pull a weapon out, gets killed. And then that's when Thel...
He banishes his lineage?
Yeah, so instead of killing all of them, he said, he did one thing that wasn't cowardice.
Yeah.
He managed to save them. Like, they're now banned out of the clan. I think they have a day or two.
Yeah, he said they have a day to leave and then we're going to kill him. And what he said was, he didn't beg for his life. He tried to face me. He said, if he would have begged for his life, I would have killed them all, which is just... Their concept of honor is so weird and bizarre, and it just comes up more and more. If you literally look at someone wrong, it's like you could potentially be killed and your family be killed as well.
Yeah, because it almost seems like the Sangheili were written or kind of put into it as like the stereotypical we are warriors race, but it's so much deeper than that.
It's very, very deep. It's kind of like, it's inspired by Japanese culture and like fall on your sword kind of thing. Almost to a literal extent.
It is because it's, they even talk about it sometimes. If I don't have my honor, what do I have?
Yeah, if I can't fight, I have no honor. Like this crazy kind of shit going on. And then Thel is like, okay, well, I'm going on a mission, so clean up all this shit on the wall that I just caused. See ya.
Yeah, because I think this is was his first mission as Kaidan from the elders, from the prophets, basically.
Yeah. And so then afterwards, we move back to Lieutenant Keyes. So he wakes up, he's alive, and he's kind of just feeling like shit because he's like, well, I think I just screwed everyone over.
Yeah.
And so as he's getting up and getting ready, all of a sudden a bunch of ODST show up. And they just pick him up and they just take him into this room. And I'm imagining like there's one light above.
Kind of swinging a little bit.
Or like someone hits it so it starts swinging and flashing.
Well, and he even says in his head, he's like, I'm going to die.
Yep.
Like, because we did get a number of the ODST back, but obviously not all of them. And, most importantly, one of them being Faison.
Yeah, because Faison walks in the room. He says, basically, it's like, no one has talked down to me and lived. And so Keyes kind of curts him out. I was like, oh, you're all crazy bastards and all this shit. And so one of them pulls out a knife. And I'm not going to lie, when I was listening to this with that Audible audiobook, I was like, oh my God, they just pulled out a knife. And like all of a sudden, they remove his sleeve and he hears this metal buzzing. And he all of a sudden realizes like, they're giving me a tattoo. And even then I was like, oh shit, they're like branding his ass. Like they're like punishing him and they're going to put some names on there or something.
Yeah, like this is a person who went against the ODST, don't trust him. That's not what I thought. Like, don't trust him.
Well, I thought they were even just going to put the symbol on there just to be like, you'll always remember us. But then Faison is like, you saved all of our lives and I wouldn't have been able to do that. And so you found out. It's bizarre that they forced it, but they're like, if you ever need an ODST's help, show them his tattoo.
Yeah, and they'll help, regardless of what they're doing.
Yeah, it's the Chinese symbol for badass, I think. So that was like crazy because all of a sudden it's like all of them have Keyes or respect.
Yeah.
And you find out it's like they were just like, we're making you one of us, basically.
And it's great because then he has to run the gauntlet back out because he has to leave like the closet or wherever they were.
Yeah.
And all of these ODSTs are lined up and cheering and slapping at his raw tattoo as he goes by. And he's just like, I just want to die.
Well, I think the ODST were inspired by Starship Troopers. And there's that scene when they get the tattoo and they pour the whiskey on it instantly afterwards. So I don't know. It also definitely, this is, I think, one of my favorite portrayals of ODSTs actually being batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Because they're just, they're crazy.
It's that like we're family and now you're part of this crazy ass family. It's like juggalos.
You heard
the
it.
juggalos of the military.
You heard it here first, is that the ODST are pretty comparable to juggalos. So yeah, and then Keyes eventually meets back up with Watanabe.
Yeah, and because Watanabe comes up to him and says, out of all this, you're one of the only people I can trust here.
Yeah, you have
Because
that
he's
ODST
Oni, so
tattoo.
yeah,
I can trust you now.
You got a cool tattoo. You're a cool guy. Because he is Oni, so he's kind of like skeptical of everyone and everything. And he's like, we're gonna go planet side in order to complete this mission, and you're one of the only people I can trust to do this with. So Watanabe informs Keyes that they're doing this because there's a lot of these outer worlds and even some inner worlds that are getting their hands on Covenant weaponry, specifically plasma pistols, plasma rifles.
Yeah, and they're actually modified.
Yeah, because they said that on occasion, kind of like a lot of wars have happened in the past, you would take trinkets home, whether it be an enemy weapon, you'd trade it for money or somehow get in someone's hands, so that's normal. But there's been this weird, crazy influx, especially modded ones, where instead of seeing like that pressure gauge of like plasma being about to run out, there's actually a number that tells you how many shots you have left.
Yeah, so they're instantly like, something's not right here.
So they're going down to this insurrectionist base, and they have a contact there who's kind of helping them pretend to do this arms deal and kind of figure out more about this trade going on. And unfortunately, whether it be their contact or however it happened, they're discovered, and the firefight ensues.
Yeah, and it kind of all goes to shit. Eventually, Major Watanabe is shot, and he's starting to die. And yeah, so eventually they do get the ODST to come in because their boy's in trouble. They got to get their boy out now.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is where we lose a friend. So Watanabe, he was an acquaintance. I'll give him acquaintance status.
Yeah.
We knew a little bit. He's some Oni spook, so we're like, eh.
Yeah.
But this is our friend. This is our pilot from the beginning. Our
Oh,
wisecracking
I forgot.
pilot.
Yeah.
So we lose our good friend Jeffries. Oh man, in the audiobook, they do this like badass music behind it. And it's
every time there's an action scene, the music comes
it's so
in.
cool. So it's like Jeffries is like flying this Pelican, and he's like, "I'm coming in hot, boys. I'm gonna pick you up. We're gonna get the F out of here, and we're gonna go like sip some martinis on a beach.
We're gonna get some ice cream.
Yeah, we're doing it." So he comes in. It's actually like really cool. They describe it as like expert pilot, like flying like scraping rooftops almost, because Keyes is like there's RPGs. Like they're kitted out. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he dodges a couple, but then right below him, like when he comes like this, like kind of like I guess you can in your Pelican.
Sure.
Takes one to the belly.
Yep.
And then takes another and just dies in a fiery explosion. And Keyes is like, we have to go down and check. And everyone there is like, we can't. Like, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, because this whole entire time they're like hid out in this building, and there's a bunch of even civilians trying to kill them.
Yeah, because our insurrectionist leader, mob leader, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Mob maniac.
Yeah, because he just started getting everyone kind of amped up and like trying to fire on people. And
he's like an arms dealer, and he's like, anyone who kills them, like, I'm going to give you extra guns.
Yeah, you're going to get guns. You're going to get plasma weapons. You're going to do all this stuff. Yeah, it's Jason Kincaid, and Kincaid is nuts because he ends up making his way up to this kind of ramparts that they're fighting on this roof, and he's the one who kills Watanabe.
Yeah. But in a poetic justice kind of sense, Keyes does kill him.
I think with his own plasma weapon too. And he just like pops his head off.
Well, doesn't he at first just shoot him and downs him, and then just walks up to him and like caps him in the head?
Yeah, because
maybe I'm wrong.
I think he shoots him in the leg, and like he's down and like wincing, and he's like, you guys have effed up. Like you're never gonna do anything with this.
We're gonna win one day.
And he was like, I think he was reaching for another sidearm or something, and then that's when Keyes shot him. And this is the first human that Keyes has ever killed.
Yeah, it blows his head clean off. And so you kind of see Keyes is conflicted by this, but he's an insurrectionist and he sucks, and I don't feel bad about it.
No, not at all.
So yeah, eventually ODST do come in, and they just tear through everyone. Like, it describes how it's just like, they're just robots.
Well, and Keyes, he even has that still, because he's all about kind of saving who he can. He just yells over it. He's like, the ODSTs are coming in. If you don't want to be part of this culling, go home.
Yeah, he's like, if they see you standing in the street, they will kill you. Like, so get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot. That was really interesting. All these people tried to kill him, and he still like tried to save them.
Because he understands. He's like, these are people, once again, in a circumstance. And he's like, I know not all of you are here and trying to follow this guy, because he even throws his body off the edge.
Oh, yeah, kind of like make a statement.
Yeah, because he's like, I took him out. I can do this to you as well. ODST are on their way in like 5 minutes or something. Leave. And yeah, it's kind of where we see that happen, and ODSTs come in and sweep up.
Yeah. The story changes, and now we actually, it first starts, we see the Prophet of Regret, and he's watching a world get burnt. Or
Get
glassed,
glassed,
yeah.
yeah.
And so he eventually just kind of gets bored of it and it's like, whatever, and like moves on. And they kind of like start to think like, man, how many worlds do these guys live on? Like, kind of thought that first one we found was the one.
Yeah, because they're going around burning human worlds specifically.
Yeah, because for the most part, I could be wrong, but every species of the Covenant just has one world that they live on. So they thought the same thing with humanity. They're like, cool, we got rid of these guys. And then they're like, oh, wait, what's that? Oh, wait, what's that? Shit. This is going to be a while.
Yeah, they've expanded.
Yeah, and they never realized that. But yeah, so it's Prophet of Regret, and he meets up with the Arbiter because the Covenant is having the same problem as the UNSC. They're like, look at this. Like, he shows Thel this plasma rifle. He's like, look at this thing. Tell me what's weird about it. And I love the little detail that, like, he's surrounded by honor guards, and he's like, do I pick this up in front of him? One of the honor guards is like, you're good.
Yeah.
He gives him a like nod, like, you're fine. But he sees the numbers on there. They're like, they're tampering with our weapons. That's heresy. You need to go. We're going to send you with some Jirohanai and some Kigyar. You need to go to this human world. What is it? 23 Libre. You need to go to the 23 Libre system, not world system. You need to find out who is trading with the humans.
Yeah, because obviously kind of how humans are thinking, like, who's betraying us by trading with the Kigyar, they're thinking, what race, who out there is betraying us and altering these weapons and creating heresy and possibly helping these humans out.
Yeah, so they make their way to, is it Hessoid, I think? And then eventually we see that the Jirohanai and the Kigyar, there's a ship mistress on there. They betray Vadami. They're like, guess what? We don't like you. Because even Thel expressed, like, I don't want to work with brutes and Kigyar.
Yeah.
They have no honor. They're stupid. They suck. They probably, I don't know what
They're both out
do.
for themselves.
Yeah, so they're like, nah, we ain't doing this. But they had to. And then Thel was kind of right with not wanting to work with them because they betray him. So they board their ship and they kidnap him. Oh, and I do want to mention that Thel did get a promotion in this. Because he thought he was like in trouble for some reason. He did end up getting a promotion for all this, and now he's kidnapped.
Yeah, and obviously being kidnapped by a lesser species, especially for him, is such a dishonor. And it's like, there's no way I can show my face back.
Yeah.
And show the prophets this. Like, I have to do something. And so now we're back with Keyes and the crew on the Midsummer Night. And they, at this point, had been following the Kestrel. This was the ship that we had our Spartans earlier kind of talking about and trying to get information in the bar.
Yeah.
So they have been kind of stalking this ship. And they're like, this is really easy. They're not even noticing us until they come across Covenant ship.
And they're kind of like, uh-oh, this is not good.
Yeah, what are the Covenant doing out here, like, by these rocks? And, like, why is the Kessel so cool going by this?
Yeah, and this is kind of where they find the Rubble, correct?
Yeah, and this is where we describe it. It's apparently an anomaly. It's kind of what they say everyone pictures asteroid belts to be. They're like super tight-knit asteroids right next to each other and you can't get through it. But in reality, it's really spread out. So when they're seeing this huge group of asteroids, like within a mile or so of each other, all grouped together, and then when they zoom in even tighter, they're like, oh, they have connectors and bridges, and this is a living place.
Yeah, and that's the Rubble. And so then it does they do say, okay, we're gonna kind of sneak in there. Let's see what's going on, and that's when it moves back to Thel, and Thel and his bridge crew are currently they're in the Rubble.
Yep.
And they're in this prison, and they realize like as you said, like oh shit. They're kind of like, oh shit, we are kind of dishonored here. And even one of his bridge crew is like injured. It was like Jorah Cornery?
Yeah, it was Jorah. Jorah was kind of his right-hand man. He actually threw himself at the attackers unarmed, just like charging in. Bah! Yeah, he did that, just waving his arms, just running in, and then he got shot up.
Yeah, he's talking to Thel, and he's like, listen, here's a like a bedpost that I've been sharpening into a spear.
Yeah, because
I'm worthless.
And that's when they realized too they're in this human base because like there's a human bed here. So they took one of the metal posts and he sharpened it down to basically like a death spear. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, I can't fight, so I'm useless. Let me die with honor. Here's that honor thing again. So Thel's like, all right, and just sticks it in his head. And so instantly we're kind of learning more about that honor thing, where it's like if they can't even fight, then they need to have someone else kill them, or they're not going to die with honor.
Yeah, they have to die with. In this case, this was his shipmaster and his kind of like friend above him is like, it would bring me honor if you were the one to do this. And so, like you said, going down that honor tree of like someone more honorable in their eyes doing it would give them an honorable death instead of them just going out on someone else's terms.
Yeah, and so eventually they're kind of like, they're going to try to get some ransom out of us. Like, this is kind of just this weird split-off faction of the Kig-Yar. They're going to try to get some ransom from us. Little do they know that Sangheili don't do that. We don't care. We will never do that. So he's like, so they should have killed us. So they do use that spear to kill their Ungoi guard.
Because the gravity goes out, and the Ungoi is just floating around, which I love, and they just, like, spear him through the air at that point.
Yeah. Because he was taunting him earlier as well.
Yeah, he was saying, like, not so big and mighty now. And...
well, it's like, well, guess what? We just speared your ass.
Yeah, and they, like, pull him in. They break down the bars because it's only, asteroidness that it's in. And I love that they open the door, and they're like, you should always kill Sangheili.
Yeah, never take them for prisoners because this is what happens. Like, badass. The culture is weird, but all these Sangheili in this book are badass.
Yeah, and it's great because then they start to escape, and they Thel and the rest of the Sangheili that were in there make their escape out of the prison.
Yeah, and so then on the Midsummer night, it's back to Zhang, and he's like, everyone at the Rubble knows we're here. We're not that sneaky. I kind of screwed up. So basically, they are like all their engines are taken offline. But yeah, and so they're kind of freaking out because they're like, we're about to get captured by, and we don't know much about the Rubble. So it's like insurrectionists. These insurrectionists are going to capture us, and so this is where things kind of take a crazy turn.
Yeah, and so they start to realize that when they were trying to make the jump out to space again, that their engines overheated and just were completely down, and no one was really understanding why. And when they start to look around and figure out that it was sabotage, because they're talking to the engineering crew, they're kind of looking around seeing who it was. And then you have Lieutenant Badia Campbell pulls a sidearm, and everyone's like, no, like, you don't have to do this. And you realize that she is an insurrectionist sympathizer. It's like, my family's from the outer worlds, and you didn't really care.
Yeah.
And as people start to approach her, she starts firing. And she hits some people in the leg. She grazes some others. But one of the biggest things is that she shoots Zhang in the stomach.
Yeah. And that's when all of a sudden everyone topples on top of her.
Yeah, and Keyes was the one who ends up like fighting with her and wrestling for a gun. I love at one point she just like knees him in the crotch, and it's like, but Keyes could fight through it. And like, and
of course,
yeah, and like was able to like get the gun from her and get it out of there, and then help the bridge.
Well, no, because what happens is they find out she's on some kind of, I guess, like a temporary steroid.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden she's like, again, like, they're gonna win one day, and all of a sudden she has like 3 guys fighting her, and somehow she can still take the gun and point it directly at her head.
Yeah, because Keyes was trying to wrench it away, but like you said, it's as he tries to like get it, she somehow goes into like super cocaine mode and just starts like pulling it towards her.
I
and
think
then
it's
shoots
like
herself in the head.
like cyanide steroids or something that she clipped out of her teeth or some crazy shit. Yeah, and then just like kills herself. So it's just like, well, shit. This just happened. Like Zhang is now dying, like currently dying. He goes over to tend to Zhang, and Zhang dies in this process. So we're losing a lot of people relatively quickly in this book. Like,
and one of the coolest things that the author really puts in there is we learn earlier that no one really wanted to travel with Zhang because he was seen as a reckless pilot. He actually rammed his previous ship into a Covenant ship on a suicide mission. And, you know, everyone's freaking out. Like, he lost crew. He was rescued from the vacuum of space. But it did bring the ship down, the shields at least, for Mac rounds to go in and hit it.
well, the people were saying, oh, it's because the Covenant killed his family.
Exactly.
So he's this crazy, vengeful guy. But he tells Keyes, like, I did that because we were going, like, there was no other way. This wasn't a revenge thing. This was me looking at all my options, saying, this is what I need to do.
Yeah, and he's like, this is for humanity. This is for the UNSC. This is how we can win this battle.
Yeah.
And actually going back with Lieutenant Campbell, like when she's going on her firing spree, like she brings that up. She's like, you're crazy. Like, you're going to get us all killed.
Yeah, like, she's like, do you even know who this guy is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of a sad scene because he was just like, hey, by the way, before I die, I don't suck that bad. Like, just so you know.
Yeah, and it's kind of those parting words of wisdom. It's like, kind of like, I also respect you, Keyes. Like, I want you to know actually what went down, and I know you have to make hard choices. Like, I want you to know the real reason behind mine and why, you know, I let people spread the rumors if they want. Like, there's no point in me trying to defend all this. Like, I know what I did, and that's on me.
Yeah, so they are brought down to the Rubble, and the leader tells him, like, listen, this is where we learn, like, we don't care who you are. We're a refugee, kind of asteroid world, whatever you want to call it. Like, we accept anyone.
And they even say, like, we're a full democracy. We vote on everything.
We'll vote on everything. What do you want for dinner tonight? We vote on it.
Yeah.
Privacy of your home doesn't matter. 2-ply or 1-ply? Let's vote on
Always two.
it. I don't know. They may vote 1.
I'm doubling my ply to grab this.
So yeah, so Keyes is basically kind of gives this small speech like, let's not do this. Let's not do this. This kind of sucks. And so instantly they're like, okay, you're going to jail.
So the reason that being is they were allowing the crew, they said, we want to welcome you. If you want to become citizens, you're more than welcome to become a citizen of the Rebel. The only thing that we say is you have to swallow this tracker because obviously we want to
tracker.
We want to make sure that you guys are doing good.
Yeah, chip you like a dog kind of thing. Like,
yeah, and
if you get off your leash, we know where you are.
And the crew's like, obviously, like some of probably the newer recruits or the custodian. They'd be like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Like, I'll join. But that's when Faison is like, Keyes, you're the commander. There's the ODST are not joining this Rubble group. I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
He's like, but you need to give a speech for the rest of the crew. And Keyes gives this kind of like lukewarm, like, guys,
It's kind of cheesy.
we're in space together, and we've been in space together. You know what we should do? Still be in space together.
I was kneed in the crotch, but I fought through it.
But I fought through it. My voice is a little squeaky right now, but I'm recovering. So yeah, it was kind of like this lukewarm speech, and Faison's like, "That's the best you got." Oh, okay.
It was kind of one of those things like one person claps, and the person next
Out
to
of
him
sympathy.
like stops him from clapping.
Yeah.
So Faison and a handful of other crew don't join, but Keyes notices a bunch of ODSTs are like, "Nah, we're gonna join," and he's like, "Faison, what the hell?" He's like, "Feet first." So basically saying like, nah, they're infiltrating.
Yeah.
Like they're not actually
No, they'll be
joining.
the first ones in, like, so they can disrupt when they have to disrupt.
So Delgado returns back to the Rubble, and instantly Bonifacio's kind of henchman, I guess you can call it, take him in. They're like, all right, you're coming with us. And we find out that the council actually thinks that it's Delgado who's kind of the smuggler, or, you know, who's giving this information to the Kig Yar.
Yeah, because they were saying
A lot of politics.
yeah, that him and his friend who had passed away from the gunshot, that they were the only ones who really knew about it, and that it was possibly Delgado who got his friend killed.
Yeah.
So that he could then sell it to the Kig Yar. And Delgado's like, what? you are the ones who hired me for this. Like, why would I be part of this? And so to kind of detain him for now and to talk about what they're going to do, you have Bonifacio's like, oh, I'll take him with my guys and like we'll go talk it through and we'll figure it out. Don't worry, we'll be right back.
Yeah, we'll be right back. He's like a gun behind his back. He's like, oh, we're good. Yeah, and this is where some shit kind of hits the fan.
Mm-hmm. So Delgado, who was, kind of talking with the guard when they're there.
That guard's name is Owen. Don't ask me why I remember that. That's the only time that gets
and he's
brought
watching
up.
Netflix.
Yeah, literally it.
Yeah, so Owen, the Netflix watching guard, but Delgado's talking to him. He's like, dude, why are you doing this? Like, why am I here? Why, obviously you guys are only keeping me here because you're going to kill me. Like, you're waiting for this nav data stuff to happen. And so that's when he learns that the Kestrel, which is Bonifacio's ship, was sabotaged by the Spartans we saw earlier.
Yeah.
And the nav data that was on there was destroyed. And as a result, Bonifacio needs Delgado's data. So like he had went in, pulled his own, and was like, that'll be extra just in case. Like that'll be the backup. But now the main copies that I have is dead. So I need it. And so instead of Delgado dying at, whenever Bonifacio wanted to kill him, he's like, all right, you got to take me to it now.
Yeah. So yeah, they go back to the council, and he kind of learns about the Exodus project, but they're kind of like pushing back on letting him know
exactly what it is, when it's happening, like all that stuff.
But they learn like, okay, we need your navigation data. So Diego and Bonifacio are like, all right, let's go and get this with Delgado. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of goes south from there because they get in this weird Mexican standoff at one point. So yeah, they eventually get the navigation data, and Bonifacio is like, hey, let me carry that. And Diego's like, no, I'm fine. I want to make sure it gets back to the council. And Bonifacio is like, I was afraid you were going to say that, and shoots him. Kind of like, I kind of actually like that cliche. I was afraid you were going to say that, and shoots him. And then they lock Diego and Delgado in this ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they were on the Distancia, which is Delgado's ship. And they kind of made the joke of like, oh, you hit it right under your own nose. It's like, got to hide it in plain sight. Otherwise, people go snooping around everywhere else. So yeah, so Diego's shot and tries to fire on Delgado. Delgado doesn't get shot, survives it through.
Sleazebag.
Mm-hmm. And you learn that whenever Bonifacio sabotaged the ship's airlock, he basically did it in a way that it wasn't an emergency. It was kind of like, oh, it's jammed. It's a routine repair.
Yeah.
So no one could radio out. And he's like, someone from repairs will be up to see you eventually.
Yeah. So basically, you guys are going to suffocate and die.
Yeah, you guys are going to lose all your oxygen.
And that's when he's like, I have a get out of jail free card. Here's this Spartan 2 beacon that I have. So he activates the beacon, and then the story now changes, and we're back to Thel and the rest of his surviving elites. And they're just kicking ass, and they take over the Kigyar ship on the surface of Medisit. And what we learn, what Medisit is, it's this kind of, what is it, like a moon?
Yeah,
a world?
It's a moon. It's a large moon where the Kigyar have set up, and they have started breeding the grunts.
Basically, it's like a grunt utopia.
Yeah, because it's actually methane rich. So there's not water, there's liquid methane that these rivers run through. So they're actually able to breathe kind of wherever they can. And the Kigyar have made this weird nesting area out of like ship parts, because they're like scavenger pirates. So they only like build off of, they can't create, they just kind of take pieces and Lego it up.
Yeah. Well, because they find this out because they're talking to this grunt, and he refers to this place as like a dream. Because they're like, why are you being vague? And he describes like, it's methane rich. It's just this paradise, and we don't have any breeding restrictions because they breed like rabbits. Like you learned, like I think we learned that in Contact Harvest, that they needed to be restricted for breeding.
Well, that's whenever the Kigyar really got on them and started like poisoning all like the female grunts and all those things from them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so eventually Thel and the rest of his men, they kidnap Reth, and he's the leader of the Kigyar of this like operation kind of.
That's on the moon.
Yeah, because he's realizing he has like an army, because when they're talking to that grunt, they're like, what does he have, like a couple hundred? And he's like, no, it's like a couple thousand. And he's like, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Like, which they're basically like, if you have like 10,000 grunts, they don't need weapons.
Yeah.
It's literally just a number.
It's just a wall of teeth and like claws running at you.
Yeah, suffocating from lack of methane they're not getting at that point. But I always thought that was interesting that they had like this kind of paradise. As I said, like these, I think they talk about the specific methane waterfall. Like,
Yeah, because that
bastards.
same prison guard grunt was like, whenever the Kig-Yar, so we actually, I think we learned from that grunt too, a little bit of the Kig-Yar's plan, and that they are actually going to eventually, take over the Rubble because it's the perfect breeding ground for Kig-Yar. Like the craters and everything are perfect. He's like, once the Kig-Yars deal with the humans, like, all of us get the methane-rich moon.
Yeah.
And we can live here happy.
But yeah, so Thel and the rest of the elites just are beating the shit out of Reth. Like, and he's telling them the truth. He's like, yo, Prophet of Truth sent me to do this.
Yeah.
Like, just an FYI, Prophet of Truth sent me to do this. And they're like, bullshit.
Like, we're on a holy mission.
We're on a mission from regret to stop you guys from doing this. He's like, dude, it's like one of those things. He's like, I'm telling you the truth. Like, I cannot make this up. And so they're worried at this point because they're like, okay, are we committing heresy right now? What are we doing? And Thel's like, no, we're on a mission from the prophet.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know that this is, against another prophet's will. We're just doing what we're told. Like, we can't freak out about this right now. We got to calm down.
Because up until this point, if you heard one thing from one prophet, that meant it kind of came from all of them. Like, they're all on that same trajectory.
Yeah, and now we kind of find out that's not the case at all. But then, yeah, eventually Reth still has some Ungoi that are under his banner because the elites did, like, recruit some Ungoi. Like, hey, we're going to kill you if you don't help us.
Yeah, because they talked to the deacon that was on that ship that they stole, and it was like, you got two choices, join us or die.
Yeah, and then Reth is like, you got two choices, stay with them and live or come with me and live. It doesn't matter. Just come on, help me out. So they get out of there. So then the story moves now back. This is like chapter 75 or something at this point.
About 610, yeah.
So it goes now to Delgado, and Gray Team shows up to save them. Diego's dead, but they're able to save Delgado in the process.
And I believe he's passed out. So they recover both bodies limp. And that's when Jai asked, like, two of them. And we learned that, yeah, Diego did not make it. He suffered, blood loss, nothing they could do. So whenever Delgado wakes up and is like, he realizes that his friend is dead, he's on this ship, he's panicking. Like anyone would, who's lack of oxygen kind of coming back to life. And once things have settled down between them, they start talking about what all happened on the ship. And talking about that Bonifacio had taken the data and he's going to give it to the Kig-Yar. And the Spartans are like, so the Kig-Yar are probably really only here for that data because why else would they care?
Yeah.
Like they're trading with pirates. They're both kind of pirate species. They're both pirate people, as people say. So they're like, yeah, that's probably all they want.
Yeah.
So we need to devise a plan to make sure that they do not get their hands on it.
Yeah, and so they're kind of like, well, let's take over one of the ships. Like, let's attack one of the Kig-Yar ships so we can find out their plans for sure. Like, specifically know what the fuck they're doing.
And as this plan is going on, I believe this is the part where we meet Juliana, which is the Rubble's AI.
Very rampant AI.
So she's what, 7 or 8 years at this point?
I think 8 because she's fighting off rampancy at this
That's right.
point.
And she's saying, like, I will do what I can for this because I want to save the Rubble. And what you can do is you can take me and get me on a Kig-Yar ship and we can figure out their communique and kind of what's going on and why they're doing this. And so backtracking a little bit, they then use that data to kind of talk about, hey, this is what the Kig-Yar want. They want that. Now we have this mission set up to kind of figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah, well, what they eventually do is they go and they take back the Midsummer Night. They go and they liberate Keys and the ODST.
Yeah, because I think with Juliana, it was like, oh, your people are on the planet. Just go get them.
Yeah, so they go and they liberate them, and then they do take back the Midsummer night. So it's cool. Like we're kind of getting this giant reunion now, kind of like what all these books kind of start to lead up to. We kind of start seeing the wheels start turning, and it starts to make for some really cool things that are going to go down. And I think like this last third of the book that we're in or so, or last quarter. So they devise a plan and they're like, all right, infinite spoils. That Kigyar ship, let's go get it. Like,
Yeah, because that's the ship docked in with the Rubble.
and so Juliana's like, get me in that nav data. I'll be able to do this.
Yeah, be able to figure out what's going on. What is their actual plan? Are there reinforcements? Who's here? Who are we actually fighting, basically?
Yeah. So they do, like Delgado does kind of like, quote unquote, join. He's like part of the ranks now. He doesn't join the UNSC, but he's fighting with them.
Yeah, he's kind of like that cool rebel fighter pilot in Star Wars.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I guess I'll
I'll
join you.
There is tension with that. We see because the UNSC are pissed about it. Because he kind of is an insurrectionist. He's like a recovering insurrectionist.
Well, it's because him and Maria and her family, they were able to escape their home planet. And they unfortunately were the only ones to make it. Their parents didn't, the rest of their family didn't. And they kind of got adopted by Diego. And so we see that he was never an insurrectionist, more a refugee who just found work.
Yeah, he kind of rolled with the insurrectionists. So they do make their way on to the infinite spoils. And I know that Delgado's on there, and he's with a few ODST, Faison being one of them. And as they're making their way through, all of a sudden, Faison gets shot.
Yeah, because I believe Faison and Delgado was still on the ship, kind of like processing data, making sure stuff was going right. And then that's when one of these Spartans kind of warns and is like, hey, there's elites here. Like, we're dealing with this stuff.
They're like, oh,
and they're like,
shit.
okay, we got to get Delgado and like all of like the techie people off, and we got to go. So that's when Faison finds them. They start going, and Faison's got his rifle. Delgado's got his trusty sidearm.
Senor Seis.
And they're going through, and so they're kind of like, okay, let's go. They're taking out a couple Kigyar stuff, but then Faison runs a corner too fast and gets plasma shot. I think right to the side.
I think it's like it's in the thigh because it hits that main artery.
Yeah, it hits the main artery like in the side of his thigh, and he goes down, and he's like, oh, like that's my fault. And Delgado turns around with him, like takes out the rest of the Covenant that's there, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna stay with you. He's like, I'm lost. He's like, I know I'm done. You have to go. Like we have to keep fighting this. And he's like, I'm staying with you. And he's like, you need to get out of here. Like there's nothing you can do. I need you to continue this fight. He's like, and then they have like that heartfelt moment. It's like, you're pretty badass for like an insurrectionist, like this stuff. And so he's like, give me your sidearm, take my rifle.
Yeah.
And that's when Delgado's like, no, seriously, like we're gonna make. He's like,
no, I don't want to give him my gun.
Yeah, he's like, no. And then he has like he takes Senor Seis and he's like, this is a nice piece. And he's like, yeah, my grandfather made it. He's like, I can tell I put care into it. And so then they unfortunately part. But before Delgado leaves too far, he radios in. He's like, he's down. Get a Spartan or someone over here to come help him. Yeah,
and then the narrative switches, and it's actually and I know we keep kind of talk about Thel, and his new second in command is Zar, and so him and Zar are kind of just like strolling along, walking and like talk. It's almost like a casual conversation they're having through the ship because Faison then fires at Zar, and Zar like almost like gets like jumps and like shoots him in the head and was like.
Yeah, because he gets shot like twice, right? He gets like shot twice, and like the armor doesn't really do much. But he's like, "Whoa! If that was been like a strong weapon, I could have been dead." Yeah, it like shook him. He's like, "Holy shit!" Like, did you see that? Yeah, like one of those like comedic moments. But then, and I love this misinterpretation of things. Like Zar's like, Thel, like look at this. He was wounded. He had no more honor. He wanted to die with honor, so he set himself up as a trap. And Zar's to the point, he's like, clearly they kind of do fight with honor. Like, why aren't we working with them? Why haven't they been recruited yet? We've recruited all these other species. Like, we work with grunts and jack or was Ungoy and Kigyar. Like, why aren't we working with the humans? And Thel's kind of like, you need to stop. That's That's heresy. That's
yeah, that's
getting to heresy.
And right as they're continuing the conversation, Jai just shows up out of nowhere like a freaking tank and attacks Thel. And they have this quick confrontation, and Thel realizes like, oh shit, this human's as strong as me.
Yeah, this is the first time that I think really any of the Covenant that are around there have run into Spartans so far.
Yeah.
Because they're still in the Outer Worlds.
And especially live to talk about it. And so Thel's like kind of like trying to fight him off, and eventually Jai sees like Phason's gone, so he's like, I'm out.
Yeah.
He's like, and so Thel is now shaken as well, because like, did you just see that? Like, this guy just went toe to toe with me, hand in hand combat.
And was equal.
Yeah, like we're equals. Like, this is terrifying now.
Yeah, he's like, and that's too when they even first bring up Demon, because he's like, because he's looking at the gold faceplate and he's like, who in combat wouldn't actually show their face if not for like a demon?
Yeah, well, because they think it's like they're soulless. They have no soul. Like, who is this black? Like, it was just like a black visor, and he just sees this reflection. He's like, who is this faceless monster? So it's like kind of cool to see like Spartans are now striking fear into the hearts of elites, especially Thel being kind of scared.
And so now we are in space over to Mike and Adriana's mission. So the Spartans had split off earlier, one to go take out Bonifacio with the data, the other one to obviously support the ODST and everyone on the ground or on the rock. And so Adriana decides, all right, you keep the ship, because in case this is a trap or something goes bad, you need to go. So drop me off, get out of here, and we'll go. And so Adriana starts in. She's like in the airlock, waiting. Doors open.
Love sound effects.
It's sound effects. That's how you know it's an airlock. And as it opens, she immediately takes a couple shots to like the midsection, a couple pistol rounds. So she pulls back. She double checks, like basically just shield, a couple dents. She's like, shoot first, ask questions later. That's the Spartan way. That's what I should have done.
Yeah.
So she turns, like pops like two of them. There's like three guards.
Yeah.
Pops two of them, and the last one just slides his pistol into the airlock and is like, I'm unarmed. This isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just a hired guard. I'm not
one
actually,
of those cliches. I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah. I literally just signed up to like guard some random dude so that like a street thug wouldn't take him on, not a 7-foot Spartan.
Yeah. So she's just kind of like, all right, well, see ya.
Yeah. It's like, okay, like, see you later.
Yeah, get the fuck out of here. But yeah, and this is where isn't it Bonifacio like on an escape pod?
Yeah, so she's like, because she asked the guy before, she's like, peace out. Where's Bonifacio? And the guy's like, oh, he's on a escape pod. I can show you. And then I believe it's over like radio comms. Bonifacio's like, hey, you got two choices. Like, the data is in there. Here's our options. I leave. I get out of this sector. And then you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Or, and then she's like, no, I'm just going to kill you now because I believe you have the data. He's like, how about this? I get out of shooting range of you guys.
He's literally like, I kind of get out of shooting range.
Yeah.
So if I'm lying, you can maybe catch up to me.
Yeah, you could catch up to me eventually. But I'm not. And so like it ends up being kind of like what we already said, hidden in plain sight. It's right above the airlock door that she came in.
It's literally, yeah, it's like, are you shitting me?
Yeah.
But yeah, he does eventually make his way out because they make that deal, and so then that's when they get off that ship,
leaving our unfortunate guard behind because she's like, someone will come out to get you in a week or two.
Yeah, he thinks he's just gonna tag along.
Yeah, she's like, no, thank you.
Nah, son, not today. But yeah, so after that whole series of events, everyone kind of meets back up, and this is where Juliana informs them, like, hey, the Kigya are going to use their Ungoi army, and they're going to attack the Rubble. Like, they want this area now. We need to figure out a way to fight this off. And so this is where they kind of talk about the Exodus project.
Yeah, because I believe around this point when Bonifacio is just kind of like coasting through space, he gets Reth on the phone.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, ring, ring, buddy. It's me. And he's like, oh, hey, how's it going? He's like, nothing, just chilling in this escape pod. How are you?
He's like, I'm good, friend. Yeah,
and he says, I need help. I need to be picked up. And Reth is like, you got that data? Well, so here's the thing. I do and I don't. But here's the thing. I know where it is. And Russ says, where is it? And he's like, okay, so it's going to be on that rock over there. It's going to be called Exodus. That's their plan for escape and whatnot. And then Russ like, cool, thanks, man.
Yeah, he's like, whoa, don't you want to know who has it? He's like, nah, I know enough.
Nah, I know enough. I'll figure it out. Thanks.
And then just leaves him. Because like you realize Bonifacio is just this chicken shit dude who tries to talk his way out of every situation he's in. And it worked with Adriana, but it didn't work with Reth. Reth's like, I got just enough information out of you.
Yeah, I needed what I want. I got to go to this place. I have like 400,000 Ungoi that can just comb through there. Yeah, we'll be good.
Yeah, like we're good to go. See ya, pal.
And we kind of go to Reth, kind of talking about why he's going to take Exodus at this point, realizing that if he takes this world and kills the humans there, that he'll get more kind of notoriety and be able to kind of outmaneuver the Sangheili and get more respect from the prophets, like hopefully pushing the Kigyar further in and attempting that. So we kind of get that point of view, and then we snap back to Keyes, who devises a plan to stop this whole invasion force. And what they're going to do is begin evacuating people to Exodus, using that nav data that they have to kind of hopefully get them to jump out. Because they had the question of, do we just leave them here?
Yeah.
Or do we save them? Because I believe he meets with Maria at one point when they're kind of talking. He's like, we have 1 million citizens here. Like, we need to do something. So Keyes, being the sweetheart that he is, he's
The
like,
cheese ball he is.
oh yeah, he's like, okay, I've lost all these other people. This is like my redemption arc.
Yeah.
Like this, I can save these people. And so that they decide that they're going to evacuate. They would also bombard Mediset because they know that's kind of where the Kigyar main base is. And then they're also going to unleash the Rubble on them. So it's kind of the Juliana plan of it as well.
Yeah.
And to start that, Juliana, the AI, informs them that the Kigyar's surface defenses must be destroyed first before any of these kind of plans of destruction will be able to come out. Because otherwise, when the Rubble is guided towards them, like the rocks are flying at them, they're just going to be shot out.
Yeah.
Like they have AA guns, they have all the stuff that can deal with that. So they need to get someone groundside first to deal with it.
Yeah. And so don't they plan a nuke there, right?
Yeah, because they have two objectives that they have to go to. It's an anti-air battery, and then it is the sensor station to like know what's coming.
Yeah. And so as they're doing that, doesn't it switch to Reth at this point where he's kind of like on bed rest from his like torture from the Sangheili?
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to like his story of like, okay, we need to take over the Rubble. Like if we can do that, we'll earn respect. Like the Kigyar will be beautiful, amazing people. And so the mission's set in place. We've got the Midsummer's night kind of going up, while back at base we have some of the rebel ships kind of fighting around with some other Kigyar ships. So Midsummer's night makes it up, drops these pelicans, and then also hot drops these ODSTs the same time, like at a faster than they should be going, because they did this sweet move where they like jumped into the atmosphere and used the atmosphere to slow them down while also like slingshotting them, basically.
Yeah.
To kind of bring them around to drop these pelicans off. And so they drop down half-ish, maybe a little bit more of the ODSTs make it, whether it be from dying from impact or dying from AA. And one that kind of falls off by herself is Adriana. And she's actually upside down, or like the face of it is in the ground.
Yeah.
So she actually like uses the emergency release that shoots it off, and it just goes. And it's like, oh, I'm facing down.
Yeah.
So she has to like actually use her armor, lift it off her, and throws it over.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to her, she is in with thousands of Ungoi who are boarding ships.
Yeah.
And they had left her alone because like, oh, nothing came out of it. It's like they're dead or there's nothing in it.
Yeah. And then doesn't she goes and fights him off, correct?
So what she does is she starts shooting him and realizes like, I can't do this. Jumps back in to the drop pod because they have this kind of emergency engine that's in there that'll fire if like you're stuck somewhere, you have to like reach a higher point, you can shoot it off and it'll go up again, but it's on its side. So she fires it off while she's in it, just running over Ungoi, and she like, looks up after she's done, like leaves this spray of purple all around.
Beautiful.
And pulls a rocket launcher out from it, fires everything she has, killing her. She's like, I can't do anything with this. Knows that there's an ammo dump nearby because some of the pods are ammo dumps. Goes and tries to find them. Finds up with our joins back up with her ODSTs who dropped. They continue with their mission. They end up setting nukes at both locations.
Yeah.
To go ahead and set off and destroy the AA guns, destroy any eyes that they have in the sky.
But yeah, so then that's the point to where we see that the Rubble is now being used against the Covenant, or this faction.
Mm-hmm.
So Juliana breaks off pieces of the Rubble and flies it into Medicine.
Yep.
And eventually takes out Reth with it.
Yeah, because she basically flies, like, there's two main portions of the Rubble that she flies in, and it's slower, but she can control it, and it's beautifully poetic, because Reth is kind of talking about the nukes that went off, and he's like, oh, man, they destroyed these things. It's going to take a lot of resources to build them back up, but we'll be good. Mm-hmm. And as he's saying this, there's, like, these meteorites kind of flying around, and it's lighting up the sky, and he's like, what is everybody looking at? And just sees a giant asteroid coming right at his base.
Yeah.
Crushing him and all that's in there. And it's beautiful.
And also, this is like kind of around the time that Thel and Zar are kind of figuring out, like, what can we do to regain some honor?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're kind of in trouble. We're like, well, what if, like, they start looking at the Exodus project. They're like, well, let's just get that.
Yeah.
Like, that'll help. Like, clearly the Kig-Yar are screwing up so much right now. Let's just try to take that.
Mm-hmm. Thel, because from before, we're seeing them, I believe they took spoils. They took infinite spoils as their own, and they realized, the Kig-Yar are done. It's like a moon blasting them. It's a moon blasting a moon, basically. So they're like, we're going to take the Exodus, because that's where everything is. That's where it's going to be. But at the same time, on Exodus, there was a volunteer force being started up, and basically getting equipped. Like, we've got like 3,000 Ungoi here. We got to kill them all before we go. And I believe that later on, whenever the Midsummer Night joins back up with the Exodus, the Spartans jump on like, ooh, we're going killing? All right. Just making sure that every Ungoi and whatever else is on board dead. So
it was like a suicide mission.
Yeah,
right?
It's a suicide mission.
Because Thel like looks at the Ungoi and they're like, why are you looking at us? And he's like, We're gonna send them to take this, and Zar's like, they're all gonna die. He's like, maybe.
Yeah, he's like, if it works, it works. If it doesn't.
Yeah,
it's
basically
no skin off our back.
Like basically saying like, look what we tried to do.
Yeah,
like to the prophets, like look at what we tried to do. We sent the lesser species to try to take this, so like we tried.
Yeah, we did what we could.
But obviously, when you have Grey Team on there, it fails.
Mm-hmm. And then we get back to and now with any Ungoi dealt with, like kind of the Exodus rock, as it is kind of clear of that. They're good to jump. And Keyes is trying to come up with this speech again to get to the council and say, because their original plan was to jump really far out to a different system that's still outside of UNSC controlled space. Mm-hmm. And Keyes is like, okay, gets them on the phone. Like, I have to convince you. You don't have enough power to make any of those jumps. You still kind of don't know where you're going. But with this started that we have, you can jump to the inner colonies, and we'll be there to assist you. We'll make smaller jumps, because otherwise the asteroid would just tear itself apart. 6 miles long.
Yeah.
And so we'll make these jumps, and we'll see what we can do in slip space. And Maria's there, and she said, I voted with the council, and you don't have to persuade us. Like, we've already decided, we're going to go with you.
It's like, good, because if you kick me in the crotch, I can fight through it. I can.
Yeah. And it's a really moving speech, too, because Keyes brings up, I know not all of you are insurrectionists. I can't guarantee the insurrectionists that are in there will be treated fairly. Mm-hmm. But he's like, you're talking for 1 million people. Mm-hmm. And so when they agreed to it, they eventually take their subspace jumps, because they're doing them randomly, per the Cole Protocol, until they can kind of get back towards UNSC-controlled space away from Earth.
Yeah. So kind of that, we kind of see, like, this does work out. These people are saved. They go into slip space and they're gone.
Yeah, so they're safe from here at least.
Yeah, and so then we see what you call one of our very good friends,
one of our great friends. I would call him probably one of my best friends out there,
Bonifacio. So he's on the verge of death. He's in that drop pod, and he's like, "I'm going to run out of oxygen, or I'm going to get, or the heat's going to
go out. I'm going to freeze."
So this giant Covenant carrier shows up out of nowhere, and he's like, waving them down as if they give a fuck. Like,
yeah, he's like, oh, if these guys, if the Kig-Yar are helping me, like, what if I actually get this ship? Like, he's like, obviously I'll bring you a prisoner, that sucks, but I'll be alive.
Yeah, he's having this like monologue in his head. It's like, I'm gonna make it. So he's like waving him down. He's like, over here, and they're like coming. And he's like, cool, and he's like coming at me pretty quickly. And then they just zap his ass out of space.
Yeah, it's just like a little. He's gone.
It's like literally like flicking a fly off of you.
Yeah,
and
it's
I'm
like-
assuming it's like no.
And it's like, well, clear the comm channels. Get that thing out of here.
Yeah, so that guy goes down as he should because he's a backstabbing bastard who kind of deserved what he got.
Mm-hmm.
So now it moves on to Thel and Czar again.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're in front of the prophets, Regret and Truth. And Czar's freaking out because he's like, we're going to get killed.
Yeah.
Like, and basically they were. Like, he's like, we know too much. We kind of screwed some things up. So he pulls out his energy sword. Talking to these prophets, he takes one step forward, and all of a sudden all the honor guards are like, and so then he takes another step, and Thel knows, like, this is Thel's friend. And so Thel's like, shit.
Yeah, because I think the line is like, Czar's like, I have drawn, and he like takes his steps, and then Thel goes, and I too have.
Yeah, and Czar's like, and I'm not going to put it away. So basically, Thel takes him out and just decapitates him.
Yeah, because he stabs him in the neck first, and then just like does a cool sword move, and then slices his head off.
So Regret's like, I'm out. Too much for me, I'm gone. And so Truth is like, kind of just like rolls up next to Thel, and Thel puts his head down because he doesn't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, you live, but you don't tell anyone what just happened, and you're getting a promotion.
Yeah.
So deuces, he says, you get the Fleet of Particular Justice, and sends him on his way. And you can tell in this scene, Thel is so confused. Like, he's like, I was going to die, but I killed my friend, and now I can live. Like, why were these guys fighting anyways? And it kind of like later goes to Truth and Regret talking, and they're kind of put their differences aside. They both had those different agendas, and they're like, all right, we'll still find the humans, because like I think it was Regret. Like Truth thought he could find the human homeworld with doing this trading, and Regret's like, well, we didn't get anything out of this, and he's like, it'll be fine.
Yeah, because I think Truth is like, well, maybe not, but we did. He's like, because we've already identified like 3 or 4 of the other worlds.
Yeah, like we got some stuff out of this. It wasn't a total loss.
Yeah, then they kind of, shook and made up after this. We're like, okay, we're on the same path again.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah, well, something I do want to mention, and I forget, I think, I can't remember who it was, but one Kig Yar was kind of bummed that they had to kill the humans because he started to like them. And I'm jumping back here, but it was Reth. Because he was talking about how he actually kind of like liked this whole trading thing. He's like, we're like-minded species. Like, this sucks, but we got to do what we got to do.
And that jumps back, again, to the point of kind of everyone's very similar. It's just kind of agendas that change your perception on others. So both we've seen it with Czar and with the Kig-Yar that they're like, maybe, why haven't we recruited the humans? Like, why aren't they with us? They seem very like-minded.
Yeah.
They're warriors. They're traders. They're kind of everything the Covenant's made up of. So why are we fighting them? But in the eyes of the prophets and in the current eyes at this moment of Thel is that's heresy.
Yeah.
Like they're desecrating what is, proper, basically.
Yeah, so you learn that, once again, the prophets are dicks. But yeah, then moving on, kind of wrapping everything up, there's a handful of scenes that are happening
This
now.
is where 17 chapters jump in.
Yeah, literally, it's like 4 pages, chapter, 4 pages, chapter, 4 pages, a page, chapter. But yeah, so then, the Exodus does make its way into, is it the 18 Scorpii system?
18 Scorpii system.
Yeah, and so basically, everyone's refugees for the most part now.
Yeah,
under the guise of the UNSC.
Yeah, because it's, I always love scenes like this too, because it's these bored kind of watchmen kind of sitting in their ship, and then they're like, oh, there's something coming in through slip space. That's huge. Is it Covenant? And this rock just comes through.
Yeah.
And like, it's got a friend or foe tag on it, and it's a UNSC ship. And Keyes calls over. He's like, hey, this is Keyes, the Midsummer Night. We're all friendly.
Yeah, we're Gucci. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah, and Exodus makes its kind of final resting place, I guess, whatever you want to call it right now, at Phallic Numa, which is the planet that they ended up jumping to. And we'll learn this a little bit later, but with Phallic Numa and the help of the UNSC, they're able to bring ships on and actually take off, so they say, all million citizens and bring them to the surface. And we're able to rescue them before the asteroid itself kind of broke up and kind of shattered from, because it had already been going through slip space. It's been shattering through that. Engine's blowing up.
Yeah.
So they're able to rescue him before all that happened.
Yeah. And then chapter 89, now it goes back to Zanghelios. And it's Thel Vadami and Locke Vadami, which I think they say raised him, but it's not his parents. Because it's for Zangheli culture, it's like the closest family member is your uncle.
Yeah, it's always the uncle.
You don't know your parents for some reason.
I think you're taken away from your mom once she's done like nursing you, and then like your uncle takes you over to train you.
Lucky dads, I don't have to raise a kid.
Well, if your brother has one, then you got to raise his.
Shit, true.
So yes, I think it boils down, because they talked about it a little bit more in the book, going over that. I think it's more so that they're not like super personable with you.
Yeah,
but you're still bloodlined through them, because they said like bloodline, you mostly know your uncle.
Yeah, but yeah, so Thel and Locke are talking. And Thel is just kind of confused, like, and like only like knows like I can only tell this guy, and saying like I'm confused, I don't know what's going on here. And Locke kind of gives like a backstory to him, like, we've met these guys because we were fighting with them because we had a disagreement on what we should do with Forerunner technology. Like, things are going to get a lot stranger here. Like, you just got to roll with the punches, basically.
Well, and then Locke gives a great speech with them, because Thel asks, kind of, what is heresy? Like, why are they able to fight, in amongst themselves? Why do we kill the humans? Why do we do this? What is it? And he's just like, well, heresy it's heresy. It's either or. And Thel's like, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, when we found this stuff, we sought to preserve it, and not dabble with it. It's something to be kind of religious, in a way, for us to kind of worship it. But then whenever you have these others get their hand on it, they change those rules. They break it apart. They tear it apart. Now it's heresy for us to keep it that way. So he's like, it changes per whoever's ruling.
Yeah.
And he's like, you need to go with what you kind of believe as the way to go.
Yeah. So it definitely interesting, like, kind of morality questioning going on, or moral questioning going on through this. So then now we meet Admiral Preston Cole in the book.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. And Keyes is like, I'm in trouble. Because he broke the Cole protocol, correct? While trying to save all these...
Yes. So he already knew he was going to be court-martialed for some other stuff. But taking, a foreign object that is not UNSC into UNSC space was huge.
He thinks he's in trouble. And he's just like, well, my career's over. But actually, like, he says that it's almost like Cole's putting on this act. Like, knows what's going on, but still slowly turning the pages and listening to everything he's saying and kind of being stern.
And he it's interesting, too, because he starts to bring up, he said, you brought this foreign object into our space, and it's broken apart, in the orbit of Phallic Numa. And, we're using MAC rounds to blow up the bigger ones, but honestly, it's going to be years before we clear that out. He's like, you kind of ruined that planet. You've also given us 1 million foreigners that we have to house and do this stuff with. There's insurrectionists among them. And the insurrectionists that we knew of that are in the camp have escaped and have gone out. But what you've given us, many of these people are pilots. And we've actually had them join the UNSC.
Yeah.
Many of these people knew about Covenant technology and fought them one-on-one. You've brought them to the UNSC. You're able to save these people's lives. And, great job.
Yep. He's like, you are a commander now.
Yeah. Great job, Commander Keyes.
Yeah, because he makes a comment like, you're not ever going to teach again.
Yeah.
Like, people are going to talk about what
You're going to be in the history books. You're not going to be teaching the history books.
Which is, I mean, he does, I'm assuming, I can't confirm or deny right now, but that he went in the history books. Like, he was such a pivotal role, and we see that he did do these things that he needed to do. It's like, maybe someone else wouldn't have done this, but, like, see what they got from this.
Yeah, and you know, he's saying, you know, the Cole protocol was put into effect with this. Like, you have followed it to what you could, but you did what a commander should, basically.
Yeah. So then as he's leaving, he sees the Spartans. He's kind of like, huh? And you realize that they're actually Oni. Like, you didn't think, like, you thought they were just like secret or UNSC, but it's like they're Oni. Well, what they needed a new ship.
Yeah, because they had left the Petya behind because they were like, okay, you know, we didn't want to drag it around. We didn't want to try and jump through slip space with it. So we just left it there. We need a new prowler.
Yeah, they're like, we were thinking about stealing one.
Yeah.
So you should probably just give us one. And Cole's like, fine, and you're going deeper into any enemy lines now. We're sending you deeper than ever before. And they were literally just like, cool.
Yeah, and it was neat because they were talking about, like, Cole's inner monologue, saying, like, and Cole thought that, you know, all three of them wore like a huge smile under their helmet.
Yeah,
they were super excited for this.
Because that's what they love. They love this weird covert shit where they don't talk to anyone for years at a time.
Yeah,
right?
and they just get to cause mischief and do whatever they want, kind of thing, and, you know, complete their missions, but do what they want with it. They get to go drink at a bar. They get to go do this other stuff and, like, interact and just be part of it.
Yeah. And so then, you know, wrapping up with the now Keyes and Spartans and Thel, we see, or it actually didn't wrap up with Keyes, but we see then Delgado, and he's talking to this recruiter who, you know, Delgado's like, I want to be Navy. And he's like, you're not going to be Navy.
Yeah, and he's so bored with it because the whole thing is like questionnaires. Who is your family? Given a psych eval.
Yeah.
You know, were you an insurrectionist? This, and that. And it's funny because at one point, you know, it narrates and says, and the recruiter saw that he was bored with it. So he's just like, okay, well, we're done here. You know, my people will call your people. You know, we'll let you know.
But he's like, you're not going to be in the Navy. Like, we need Marines, but you're not going to drive a ship.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, this Oni officer walks in and basically just like, no, he's in the Navy. And he's like, what? Like, the recruiter's like, are you shitting me? Like, he can't be in the Navy. And he's like,
he's known insurrectionist ties. Like, he's a bit crazy.
well, he's like, well, how many people do you know have faced the Covenant one-on-one and survived? Like, he basically was just like, yeah, like, if he makes it through boot camp, then he's with us. So Delgado, through all of this, is now in the UNSC. He joins the UNSC finally.
Almost.
Almost.
He does one thing before that.
What is it?
And it's one of my favorite things.
Oh, yeah.
He so he's talking to this Oni officer, you know, and he's like jabbing with him because the Oni officer's like, well, you know, he may be a new man after boot. He's like, you're not going to disappoint us at boot. And he goes, no, sir. And he said, you know, before I sign, like, I'm not in the UNSC yet, right? And he goes like, you're not in the UNSC yet. So he flips him off. And then after he flips him off, he puts his thumb on and signs. And he's like, welcome to the UNSC.
It's one of those things like, you got me, you bastard. You got me.
So good. So, yeah, and I believe he's, you know, wants him to pilot his own crew and be a captain and all those things. It's really, really cool. And for his story, at least.
So the final pages of the book, we see Keyes, you know, he gets a few weeks to go back home.
Yeah, because I think he gets a new apartment, too, because it's like a commander apartment or something, some fancy thing.
And he walks in to find Miranda. He, like, runs up and he gives her a big old hug, and she's kind of surprised, and he can tell, and he's like, man, I've kind of been a strict father.
Be like a strict Navy dad, like that I haven't seen you in weeks, and I hug you, and you're like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, and so he kind of sees he's like hoping to like keep her busy. He's like, "What are you working on over there?" It's like, "You working on homework?" And she's just like, "No, I'm just screwing around."
Yeah, and so he gets like, "What are you screwing around on?" And then she's like, "Well, I'm listening to this thing on Audible because today's show is sponsored by Audible." My transitions are great. So yeah, today's show is sponsored by Audible. Audible is giving all of our listeners a free audiobook, and it's no strings attached. You guys can just sign up, get your free book.
They don't
cancel or don't cancel. It doesn't matter. There's no auto renew.
Yeah, they do not charge until you say charge me.
Yeah, and it's really cool. Like Jesse and I said, we use it for all of this stuff because we are slow readers. So when we have these, we can kind of take notes as we listen to it. Plus, it's great in the car, at work, at the gym. You know, it gives you something to listen to that's maybe you're done with a lot of podcasts. You can do that, or music. Anyway, it allows you to keep up with us. Like, that's why we want to let you guys know, like, what's coming up. You can listen to the book and honestly learn a lot of the lore that we've kind of been learning with this.
Yeah. And what's cool is with this, I think it was the first time they ever did it. Throughout the book, whenever an action scene comes up, they play some music.
Some cool music.
It's pretty badass.
Yeah, so you can sign up today at audibletrial.com/finishthefight. Once again, that is audibletrial.com/finishthefight to get your free audiobook today. Thanks again, Audible, for sponsoring this podcast.
So then after she gives
the entire spiel about what she was saying, she's like, JK. She's actually going over naval battles.
Yeah, and so it's just like, I love seeing this little thing, like we see the way she is because she had this dad to look up to.
Yeah, and you know, he's even saying, like, he's like, is this for homework? She's like, nah, it's just something I'm working on. You know, like looking over these old battles, and she's running like, because they're all like holograms, and she's running like 5 of them at the same time, like at different screens, different areas, and like watching each simultaneously.
Yeah, she's a genius child.
Yeah, and it shows you that, you know, she's a Keyes.
Yep, and so it kind of ends. Don't they go and get ice cream?
Yeah, and there's 2 portions of this that I think really stuck with me in this chapter specifically. I kind of want to read verbatim because it talks about the real dark side of Keyes, I would say, but then also just the really lighthearted, beautiful last sentence of the book. So to start off, you know, he's saying, "Oh, I was hoping to tear you away. Let's get some ice cream." And so, quote, outside, as he locked the door, he refused to look up through the clear lunar dome at the night sky and the stars. For Keyes, stars were no longer distant, amazing things. Now they were filled with the threat of the Covenant, bearing down and moving even closer. An implacable foe. So I think it's just like, it's really cool that, yeah, I guess they got a victory with this, but like he knows what's to come.
Yeah, he knows like this was a small victory.
And to finish off the book, the last quote. So Keyes and his daughter, after he rains doom in his own head about what's happening, you know, it ends with, there might even, you know, like they're talking about, you know, they're going to get some ice cream. Like they're just looking around this really cool stuff that's around them. And because tonight he was just a father out with his daughter, enjoying the simple treats of life. So it shows that, you know, like even though he's got this, he knows what he's done and what's to come, but he can still really enjoy time with his daughter and like understanding that, you know, he's still a person. Like he still is there and he can rest easy at night knowing that even though those first few missions, he lost ODST, he lost friends, he lost captain, he lost all these people, he brought 1 million people back, like to live lives and to really boost up even the, you know, the war effort. I just thought that was just a really nice way to end it.
And that's it. That is the Cole Protocol. So now let's move on to what does this do for the lore? So just some quick bullet points. I think a main thing for me is insight into the Sangheili culture.
Yeah.
I think that was huge.
Well, it brought in, like we said, kind of breeding, upbringing, combat, honor, you know, knowing, like even like Thel, like coming up as the Kaidan, that like seeing how that was done, seeing the honor that comes with being a Kaidan. I thought it was just really, really well written with it, and just gives a really nice starter insight into just some of the lore with Sangheili. Yeah,
we also see just how Jacob Keyes got to where he was. Like we didn't just see him, you know, like in the fall of Reach, it was like he was young. Now he's just this big time captain commander. Like this is kind of some small steps that were taken and some amazing things he had to do and all these lives he had to save. Also, we got to see Grey Team and their origins, which I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of like Fall of Reach story, but in like a tiny snippet.
Yeah.
You know, of kind of what they went through as kids and gave them background onto their attitude and obviously their own job of today, which is awesome.
Yeah. We also saw Trouble in Paradise when it came to the prophets. Like, clearly they have different agendas and they kind of bicker about it. And I think you see clearly Regret goes off on shit when he doesn't know any better. And you can tell that Truth is kind of annoyed with it. So whenever, you know, he dies, he's clearly not that upset in Halo 2. He's like, dick.
He's like, all right, sweet, good.
Sweet, don't have to deal with this guy. I don't have to deal with this old guy, and then I'm good. Mm-hmm. And then we also saw at one point human covenant relations.
Yeah, which I believe that's one of, if not the only so far, of a positive human covenant relationship, or at least a neutral one.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we've seen it where, like, in the several comic book series that we did, is that, you know, they took, like, when they invaded Cleveland, like, they took prisoners. There's obviously moments and times that we've seen that and other interactions, but this is the first time where it had nothing to do with war, strictly on the surface level was trading.
Yeah, trading, just, hey, we're pirates. We don't like our factions. Let's just trade boxes. I don't know what they traded.
Yeah, just generic boxes with like a logo on it.
Yeah. So let's move on to the reception of this book. So many fans were nervous of the idea of a new writer coming into the fold to write a tie-in novel. Before Buckell, most of the novels had been written by Eric Nyland, a novel written by Joe Staton and William C. Dietz, and both had been kind of in the thick of Bungie, so they knew the lore. But with that being said, even though there were some concerns from the fans, the book would be welcome with mostly decent feedback. The book would go on to land the number 4 spot on the New York's bestseller list. The book has a 3.9 out of 5 on Goodreads.com, a 7.8 out of 10 on fantasybookrareview.co.uk, a 4.6 out of 5 on Audible, and a 96% approval rating on Google Books.
Yeah. And from this, we saw a couple release versions of it. We saw the paperback edition of it. We saw a box set that contained Contact Harvest and Ghost of Onyx, along with Cold Protocol, and then the audiobook.
Yep. So with that being said, let's wrap this up. What did we think of this? What did we think of the Cold Protocol?
So I want to touch on the stigma of this book to start. A lot of people, I'm not going to say don't enjoy the book, but they think it's unnecessary because it's not really a huge amount of canonical stuff that mattered in a way, I guess you would say. But I think overall, like the insights that it gives to Sangheili, the covenant-human relationship that develops, and even just seeing keys in action is, I think, in my opinion, really important. And I think the book told it really well. I think Buckell did really well in telling certain aspects of it, made it really colorful writing where you could visualize everything that he said and feel for the characters who either died or lost something. Like it was actually pretty big.
I liked it a lot for sure. Again, we were literally, because you grabbed the book just now just so you could read those 2 quotes, and you were literally just like, this is half a page and it's a chapter. Like, I thought that was silly, but at the same time, like, that's not a real criticism, really, because it doesn't affect the flow of the book. I could see why some fans were like, this is, like, it's not a mainline story. It was our first really just off to the side story. But I really liked it. I thought it was really good. And we're going to be getting into more and more of those because the Halo universe is so damn expansive. Like, you can't expect these books to not happen.
Well, I guess that's the issue, because you could argue that about A Harvest.
Well, I'd say that was mainline because that was the beginning. That was the first point of contact.
Sure, but you could still argue that it was not necessary.
True. I agree with you on that. And I'm not saying that I agree with
No,
people.
I'm just saying like if you're trying to argue with fans about like those type of things, like it's I get that it is a front portion of it is technically the start of the Human Covenant War, but it's also a story that really didn't need to be told in such detail. It could have just been like, it started here.
Yeah.
So I think I'm glad that they're taking those points. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like, I'm glad that books like Contact Harvest, Cold Protocol come out of this, whether it stays super mainline or whether it's an offshoot story. If it's told well, why not add it to a repertoire to like read or listen to?
Yeah, you get these cool stories out of this. Like, you get cool backgrounds and insights into the lore. And we all love the fucking lore, so why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Like, I think, like, going through this book, going through books in general, and, like, with the comics and everything, like, it's a lot more fun than just, like, watching a YouTube video on it. Like, not to, like, talk down about that, but it's, like, I'd say if, like, let's say if you if you want to know what happens in the Cole Protocol, watch a YouTube video about, like a lore video about it. If that sounds interesting, then do it. Because like even like we can't cover a majority of the things that are like said in the book or like all the small details. Like read this book if you can, whether you get a physical issue or you do an audiobook. Like it's a great book. It's a great read.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend it. I'll say like a 4 out of 5 for me. It was pretty good. I liked it.
Yeah, I'll give it 1 Rubble home world to 7 Saying Healy worlds.
Is that your score?
Yeah.
Screw it. Let's go with that.
It's a good book. I enjoyed it.
But yeah, with that being said, I think this was a fun one to do. I definitely loved Kel's upbringing and story was really interesting. It brought a unique perspective to the Halo universe we haven't seen before.
Well, and like it brought a writer who just happened to love Halo. Like instead of just hiring a writer to kind of do research, he just did it all on his own and brought up like, oh, I know all that.
Yeah.
Let me write to that mark.
Yeah, I think that was pretty cool. But yeah, so that was the Cole Protocol. Again, fun episode to do. If you're still listening, in 2 weeks we're gonna get kind of spooky with you guys.
It's gonna be a spoopy episode. It's gonna be a little.
In fact,
too spooky.
Someone actually suggested this on an ask on Instagram. They're like, "You should do a Halloween infection episode," and I'm like,
Already got it.
guess what, bud? We are. It's
coming out.
So our next one, we're going to be doing an episode all about the infection game mode for Halloween coming up.
Yep. And after this, if you happen to be, I think it's a $5 more Patreon member, you will get a bonus episode we're recording. And we did it on what should or shouldn't kind of be the next Halo spinoff, or what would Jesse and I really like to see. So if you're a Patreon member, you get that a week after when you hear this, when you're now hearing this, a week from then.
Yep.
And then everyone else will get it later in November. So we're going to start doing that. Patreon members will get it a month before. Regular listeners will get it a month after that. And we're also continuing our giveaway through the end of this month. Anyone who becomes a $5 member or more enters a chance to win the Halo Interactive strategy game. So we'll ship it out to you guys. Just a huge thank you for supporting us and being able to play the game yourself instead of having to try and like dig around and find it somewhere.
Yep. And also, we have a merch store now. Yeah, we have a merch store we have a US store and a UK store.
Yeah. So we wanted to make sure that the EU people and US people could be able to order merch without having exorbitant shipping rates.
Yep.
So we'll post links in wherever you're getting your location, probably either YouTube, Instagram, Discord, on SoundCloud, kind of depending on wherever you listen, where you can get the links from. We'll have that available.
Yep.
If you guys wanted to purchase anything or check out some weird stuff we designed, that'd be awesome.
And if not, if you can't find it, message us.
Yeah.
We read all messages, comments, everything like that. So let us know what you think of the podcast.
And just wanted to drop it down with a thank you to some of our super valued Patreon members. We've got Baby Z, Skyjack, Charles Zitter, and Mike. And we want to thank you guys so much for the support thus far, for everything we've worked towards with Patreon, for the store, for you guys just listening. I mean, that's, what really drives this. So I just want to thank you.
MVPs right there.
Mvs.
And with that, I'm your host, Jesse Reiners.
And I'm your host, Alex Kendall.
And thank you for tuning in to Finish the Fight, a Halo podcast.
Halo. It's finished.
No, I think we're just getting started.